What is a difficult conversation?
And how do you have them? People, it's winter. So when you see me wearing my hats inside the house, we're trying to conserve energy.
And that in itself is a type of difficult conversation. But that's not a difficult conversation we're talking about now, though. So, my definition of a difficult conversation is a conversation in which it's an area of weakness for me, an area of not one of my strong points, and so I don't like, or I don't want to shine the light on that conversation and just expose all my flaws. So a lot of times when this conversation starts, I would rather avoid the conversation, or I will get defensive, maybe aggressive, passive aggression, a little bit with that. That used to be my modus operandi. And the problem is that they tend to come up a lot, these difficult conversations, and we're just going to get into that right now. My name is Stanley.
My name is Otito.
And you're on the grey couch. And on the grey couch, you say life is not black or white, but many shades of grey. Now, why is this thing so important? It's the holiday season, and I really think that holiday season, end of the year, there are a lot of these interesting, difficult conversations that are going to be happening, either consciously or subconsciously. Temperature one, but
house cold, house warm. You're weird.
There's three.
When it's cold, you're hot.
When it's hot, you're cold. The three, fighting over the thermostat. The three big areas that I have struggled with is one, money, finances, with one of our 4 C's. 2, sex, coupling, and another 4 C's. 3, cradling, raising the kids, different styles or approaches to, what you think a kid needs or should have, what type of discipline or non-discipline you should be having. And we can just throw in the in-laws and outlaws as a bonus in there, because that's always a hot button issue.
Except you're married and only child, I guess. Even with that one.
That's what I was about to say. Even with that one, you don't get away from it. And so there, those are those difficult conversations to have, and they are uncomfortable. You feel that if you run away from them, they will just disappear by themselves. But what tends to happen, and why this is so important, is that difficult conversations tend to morph. Undiscussed difficult conversations, I should clarify, tend to morph into nebulous resentment and anger issues, and you don't even know, after a while you don't even know where the origin point is. You don't know what even caused the problem, because you're just left with all these heavy emotions without root causes, or
identified root causes.
There's
always a root cause.
And so we wanted to bring that up. So that's my intro. How have you managed with me and these difficult conversations?
I mean, I guess it's about taking the risk. I always say, right? If a person is willing to have a difficult conversation with you, it's because they care. I always say that this is the foundation of it all. A person who does not care about you will not even bother. I think that's the foundation. I think if people can reframe it to that, to say, there's care behind this, right? There's care behind this person broaching this, bringing this up, talking about this. Care for the relationship, right? Care for the person, or whatever the form of care is. Like, you don't pay attention to something that you don't love or value. I think it's what I would say there. And so
in fact, can I frame that in a little way? As in, you don't fight for something that you don't love. I mean, fight is such a trigger word, but as in passionate about something, as in you care about them. So it's
So I guess that's kind of it. Like, you take the risk, because if you've lived with somebody long enough, you can tell which way conversation will go sometimes. And so it's a choice. It's like, do I want to bother? Do I not want to bother? And then you kind of say, okay, bothering might take us to another level of understanding, another level of, like you said, clarity, another level of just relational closeness. And so then I bother, right? Okay.
So let me give you guys an example of something that happened recently that just highlights this issue. So I'd received some information on a project we were working on together, and I'd sent Otito, just as I received it, I just sent Otito, hey, this is what XY said, here's that. And I think 2 or 3 weeks later, or was it longer than that? I can't remember the time frame. I now follow up with it, or at least I tried to follow up with it and say, hey, what happened here? Did you take care of this? And her response to me was, why didn't you follow up on it? And it was an area of weakness for me, like I said, and I immediately got defensive, as in my face, my temperament. In fact, I think I was driving, I stiffened up, and like, why is this?
Your question was, did you get my message? And I said yes, I got your message.
And then
then you said okay, and I said, what is the okay about? Like I said, you know where a conversation is going, right? Like at that point, it was like I could have just said, yes, I got your message, yes, this is what I did with it, and this is where, this is where we are, all well and good, fine.
But she didn't take it. She didn't go that route.
I didn't take the bait.
She took the risk. She took the risk.
And what was the risk? To say, this is a joint project. The message you're sending to me to take care of could have also been taken care of by you, right? We could have done that as well. I have taken care of it quite all right. That's what I said. And it's done. We've moved on, And so my thing was, you're checking up now is to check up the status of the project, or for me to have said, yes, I got the message, thank you so much, and it's been checked off and we're good. But then I said, well, what about agency? Because then what might happen is next time I just keep getting that flurry of messages, right? Yes, it might keep getting taken care of before I mix up my words. But if I forget to come back to say to you, I followed up, would you now come back to me and say, no, I didn't get a follow-up? Meanwhile, this is something you could have done by yourself in the first place, right? So I wanted to kind of just almost like follow the thing upstream, right? And not be talking about it downstream for incidents later, and then you telling me, well, why didn't you say anything the first time? Because that's usually how these things happen, right? You say the first time. Like I said, at that point, there were two paths one could have taken. I could have just said, oh, here's the thing, let's go, whatever. But then, the question was that you've lived with that person long enough to know, if I do this, this might become a pattern. And then when I then say 5 steps down the road to say, why are you not doing this yourself? Then the person will come back and say, but you didn't say anything the last 4 times that I said to you, like, what's the problem now? So it's like, let's not even get to that point. Let's try and, work on agentic, what's the word? Parameters here. Who's responsible for doing what? Who's going to do what are the expectations? What needs to be done here in that sense? So
yeah, I felt handled at the time, and this is what I think I do with the kids. Almost what do you call it? Behavioral modification, as it were. As in, we don't want, and it's not mine. If this had ended this way, the next time, because it didn't even cross my mind that, what, as opposed to passing the buck, you can just check the box off yourself and take care of yourself and be done with it, since it's a project that you are supposed to be working on together, So the difficult conversation is that this now, normally she would have just paused and just given the response I would, but we went and dived a lot deeper into what exactly was coming up, and the things of real ownership over the project started to bubble up.
And expectations, right? And it really boiled down to, again, this perennial thing of cultural expectations, right? Like, because those are the unconscious things. Like, maybe as the man, I'm telling the woman, just, fix this. I don't expect anything. Because I said, you're checking up now, 2 weeks later. Is it checking up to actually see if the project had been done, or checking up to see if the good deed that you did actually registered, right? Like, let's kind of
let's peel the onion a little deeper.
Yeah. And so that's kind of.
So these difficult conversations, I wish I could say that they disappear, but they don't. They don't. And you feel a lot more. You feel uncomfortable first before you start to feel comfortable. And I'll explain. The uncomfortable that you are dealing with an area that it's not your strongest point, and you sometimes you might not even be aware, but it's uncomfortable at the time because it's the area of weakness. But with all skills that you're learning, with time, you're like, oh, you know what? We've been here before, and it didn't kill us, or it didn't destroy us. And so before that thing comes in, because of productivity or the agency, you're like, let me take care of this quickly, And so when the stakes are higher, you're like, I have equity here with this person. Let me do what I need to get done.
And I think, I always come from that care perspective to say everybody can take care of everybody, right? It's not one person's responsibility or things like that. You know what I mean? Like communal living is care at its baseline, right? Like if you look at nature, for instance, you live in a place, you're not contributing, and by contributing I mean like, what's the word?
Symbiosis?
Not, but give and take, right? In that sense. You're not doing that. There's a term that nature has for that. Like the caring is only in one direction. Now, obviously, society has made us feel like, well, the man provides the resources, the money, then perhaps he doesn't need to do X, Y, Z.
So
and those are the things that need to be reframed.
I don't mean to interject, but I want to go back to what biological term is that? I'm thinking of parasitism. Is that what you have in mind? Okay. That's not a very, very favorable.
No, it's not. But I'm saying that that's kind of, if you were to look at other biological organisms, right? That's what you would look at. But I'm not saying that's what happens to us or anything. But I'm saying that in situations where you're not now contributing any resources at all, if you were to go down the food chain, there's a term for that. A term we used to use in secondary school, quite all right. Yeah, parasites. Oh my god. But yeah, I mean, you get the point though, it's that it's a risk. I say that all the time, and so many people do not want to take that risk, consciously or subconsciously, and so you stay in the status quo. And I call the status quo the dead zone. That's what I call it. In a marriage, at least, it's a dead zone. And everybody knows that they're in that dead zone because nothing is moving, nothing is living, nothing is just like like stagnant water. And you could just be comfortable in there and not move. And that's the thing about status quo. You can get really comfortable where it's just like fiction, right? It's too much fiction to do any other thing. And so then you really have to be applying that fiction consistently so that the water keeps moving. Right? So you can move upstream, as it were. Yeah.
So my next question is that you are going to have a difficult conversation, if not now, but soon. What are some things to keep in mind? I enjoy what you're saying about take the risk. That would be the first thing I say. Take the risk. Next thing is engage.
Take the risk in a safe place. Though we keep talking about many of the things we talk about here have to be done in a zone of safety, right? Where obviously that you have to know your partner. You can't take a person who's volatile and have some sort of, I'm going to take the risk. But then, the conversation around how did the relationship get so volatile in the first place, that's a different whole conversation. But if it's, two rational people, I would say, right? Even though we like to think we're rational, we're not really, but let's use the common term that people are used to. Two rational people try to have a conversation, then take the risk. Take the risk.
What would you say are some rules of engagement, just for from a safety standpoint or just from a respect standpoint, as in the rules of engagement? Like
focus on the issue, and not on the person. That's always a big one. Focus on the issue. Are you able to articulate what the issue is? And one of the best ways to do that is to ask good questions, right? The question of help me understand, like I was saying to you, was the question about this or about this, or what was the question about? Like, and I waited for an answer. That's what makes it so difficult now, because I didn't accuse you of anything. I was literally saying to you, help me understand what your question was all about. Because you tried to say it was a neutral question, and I said, okay, that's fine, but it didn't sound neutral to me in that sense. Like, I feel like we're trying to get to the bottom of something. Let's get to the bottom of it. I have the answers for you. I could give it to you and we could close this conversation. However, you do realize X and Y and Z, right? Those kinds of things. So.
I like that. Ask good questions, because the questions, they really help to give some clarity, and that's what brought. I told you in front of that there's a question of real ownership here, and that's kind of frothed to the top. So is that even a word? And that was, what's that they said? It's not the answers that make us better, it's the questions that make us better, So that's what we have for you for this week. Holiday season, a lot of difficult questions.
Yes, difficult conversations, right? So that's, if you just remember about asking good questions, and the question is about framing, always framing up from a point of help me understand something as opposed to accusatory kind of thing. So that would be a big one. In whatever, even if you're texting it, even if you're calling it, whatever you're doing, just always frame it of understanding from your own understanding, not the other person's own. So because it's coming, right, there will be money to spend, gifts to buy. If you are a person who buys and celebrates gifts, that's another conversation again, for Christmas, right? And then people coming over, right? Are people coming over for the holidays or not? In our case, we are from Africa. This may be the time when people come, in-laws and outlaws, right? This may be the time when they come to visit you for the holidays, or you go to visit them. Like some of us travel back to Nigeria or things like that. So always just think about this, that you can preventatively work on these hard conversations.
Well, from our couch to yours, that's what we have for this. Next week is our last episode for the year. I can't believe it, 2024 is almost at the end. So
Christmas.
we will see you guys then. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And from our couch to yours, bye for now.
Bye-bye.